Hello, welcome. I'd like to thank the organisers for providing me with the opportunity to present to you today. My name is Mike Ward. I'm the Global Head of Healthcare and Life Sciences Thought Leadership at Clarivate. I thought I'd start the presentation actually with just a little sort of explanation of who Clarivate is, and sort of demonstrate actually how we're able to help our customers make decisions and solve industry challenges with connected data, and also experts as key differentiators, data as the foundation of how we deliver impactful insights. So how do we drive outcomes in the complex global healthcare ecosystem? Well, we combine global data sources and hands-on industry expertise to provide clients with customized solutions that meet their needs and also help them overcome challenges that they face. The data you see listed here sits in what we call the Research Intelligence Cloud. It fuels actionable insights, predictive analytics, and artificial intelligence capabilities, all available via a single point of access to the entire continuum of Clarivate life science solutions and accredited partner organizations. So at Clarivate, we're able to help accelerate innovation across the whole of the treatment life cycle, from tracking early research through the web of science, patent activity, company creation and development, clinical trials activity, epidemiology, the patient journey, regulatory oversight, both current and future trends, as well as help with market launch strategies. So today's conversation or presentation is around sort of cell and gene therapies. And this is a very busy slide, just highlighting the successful launches of gene and cell therapies, which has actually accelerated in recent years. China was actually the first country to approve gene therapies, but after that early success, it fell behind. However, advances in recent years is now laying a strong foundation for future success of gene and cell therapies emerging from China, which over the next 15 minutes or so, I will explain how that's happening. Indeed, last year, we saw two very, very important milestones. China's drug regulator granted a first CAR T therapy approval for Fosun Kite Biotechnology's FKC 876, which is marketed as Yescarta, also known as axicabtagene clear-lucel in both the US and Europe. That approval by the National Medical Product Administration for the CD19 directed CAR T therapy came 3.5 years after the US approval. And this CAR T therapy is going to be indicated for adult patients with relapsed or refractory large B-cell lymphoma after 2 or more lines of systemic therapy have been given. China's NMPA also approved JW Therapeutics' relmacabtagene autoleucel, which is an autologous chimeric antigen receptor therapy for the treatment of adults, again with RR-LBCL, and again after 2 lines of systemic therapy. That particular approval was actually the first CAR T product to be independently developed in China, and was approved as a Category 1 biologic product. It's also the 6th approved CAR T product globally. The anti-CD19 therapy, sometimes called Relmacel, is going to be marketed as Cartivia. Also, it's worth noting that in 2017, China actually overtook the US with as the country conducting the most clinical trials. Although it's worth noting that a lot of those clinical trials are with much smaller patient populations. So US CAR T trials still have more patients enrolled in their studies. So what is actually sort of driving this acceleration in China cell and gene therapy activity? Essentially, there are three key drivers for that rapid development. Firstly, policy and funding support from national and regional governments, investment support from the capital markets, and multinational cooperation between biopharma companies. So, for example, key regulatory changes included in 2017, the CFDA issuing guidance for tech requirements for cell therapies to obtain market authorizations. In 2019, the National Health Commission released a policy which basically outlined that somatic therapy, cell therapy, could be delivered to patients. And in 2020, the National Medical Products Administration published several technical guidelines for pharma research and evaluations for cell and gene therapies, all totally crucial for the acceleration. The capital markets have also been hugely supportive of the development of domestic Chinese cell and gene therapy companies. Key public financings include Legend Biotech. They completed a $487 million IPO on NASDAQ. And in fact, late last year, that was in 2020, and late last year, they actually were then able to go back to the capital market and raise an additional 300 million. Carsgen Therapeutics, they conducted a Hong Kong IPO for $400 million. JW Therapeutics also achieved a Hong Kong IPO, raising $300 million. And Gracell went to the US, raising on NASDAQ $209 million. So just on that public finance, that kind of money is what is required to definitely sort of accelerate the sort of clinical development of these products. We've also seen a lot of activity in the sort of the venture capital area. So we've seen across the globe, we've seen VCs piling in, especially because we've seen all those recent approvals. This is a very hot area. Also importantly, as I mentioned, is the number of multinational alliances that have been created. I mean, probably the key ones. Legend Biotech established a deal with the sort of Janssen unit of Johnson & Johnson. That was to develop siltacabtagene or autoleucel, which is a BCMA-directed CAR-T. That deal is a 50-50 cost and profit sharing deal, excluding Greater China, where in fact Legend gets 70% of the share. It involved $350 million upfront from Johnson & Johnson to Legend, and in the years since that deal has actually been created, Legend has actually managed to get an additional $250 million through successful milestone payments. So that's already been achieved. Another sort of staggering or important deal was the one between Innovent Biologics and Roche. That was a deal which had a headline figure of potentially being worth $2 billion, and it covers both multiple cell therapies and also bispecific antibodies. And as part of that, recently there was it was announced that the first patient in China had been dosed in a clinical trial for Claudin 18.2 CAR-T, which is one of the sort of the targets of that deal. Importantly, all the leading companies, global leading companies in the CAR-T space, that being Novartis, Juno, which is owned by Bristol Myers Squibb, or Kite, which is owned by Gilead Sciences. They all have major alliances with Chinese partners. Underpinning all this activity, which is going to be the foundation for future success, is the world-class science that is actually being practiced in China. This here is a bibliometric analysis of the most important scientists, based both on the numbers of papers that they have published in high impact journals, or the number of times their papers are actually cited by other researchers. Importantly, Chinese scientists feature strongly in being among the most prolific writers of such papers, and also being the most cited. And one can also see from these network maps the importance of actual close collaboration among these research teams. So, in the cancer gene therapy space, it's clear that China is again a driving force, certainly for the future. Chinese gene therapy trials are the second most in the world. The US still leads the way in gene therapy trials, but China is already catching up. To highlight actually the prominence of Chinese research, these figures illustrate the dramatic impact that Chinese basic research in cancer gene therapy is actually having. Researchers in China have published more cancer gene therapy papers in high impact journals than any other country. So you may be interested to actually sort of see that South Korea actually is the fourth most active country in the publication of cancer gene therapy papers. Chinese scientists what we're actually sort of seeing also is the prominence of Chinese research being illustrated by the fact that the top 5 institutions, the most prolific institutions in cancer gene therapy field, are all Chinese. And in fact, 7 of the top 10 are actually based in mainland China. So here is a snapshot of and a projection of how we at Clarivate anticipate the Chinese market for CAR T cell therapies actually evolving in the coming decade. From just $600,000 in 2021, we're projecting that it's going to be about $109 million by the end of the decade. This is just in China. And you can sort of see again a lot of these the producers of these products are going to be Chinese companies. JW Therapeutics is the sort of Juno Wuxi Aptech joint venture, and also Fosun Kite, again, that's a sort of joint venture between Fosun Pharma and Kite, which I mentioned earlier is owned by Gilead Sciences. So what actually is expected, what the market growth for the forecast period up to 2030, and what therapies are actually going to be responsible. As we've sort of already pointed out, we anticipate it's going to increase to $109 million by 2030. The biggest driver is going to be Yescarta, but also we're going to sort of see Novartis's Kymriah and also Cartivia are going to be the sort of the top selling brands in the Chinese CAR T cell therapy market. There's also an extraordinary active pipeline, both from multinationals, but also domestic manufacturers. So, companies like, Innovent, Cassie-Pharma, Beijing Immunochina, Carsgen Therapeutics. These are all companies that are poised to be key drivers in the coming decade. Interestingly, they're not just focusing on the Chinese domestic market. For example, Carsgen Therapeutics just recently announced that it's got a production facility, a manufacturing facility based in the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina in the US. And if we sort of look and sort of see, well, what are the drivers of that growth? Well, what we can sort of see is that the existing sort of therapeutics that are actually already available for patients actually are not that great. There's a huge unmet medical need, particularly the sort of the opportunity of the overall survival that some of these CAR T products look like they're going to be able to deliver. That's going to be a sort of a major driver. And sort of the epidemiology that we have conducted at Clarivate again shows that there's going to be a growing market. A drug treatable population is going to grow in China. So this is all going to be important. There are obviously some challenges. The sort of pricing is going to be key. These products are expensive. They're certainly expensive in Western Europe and the United States. So companies are going to have to be very, very cognizant of the kind of pricing arrangements that they're able to establish. And we've seen some very sort of innovative sort of deals being done with various countries. So that's going to be a potential challenge. But as I've already pointed out, in China, what we've actually sort of seen is how the sort of the Chinese regulatory authorities have developed in recent years, and therefore the whole sort of approach, breakthrough designation status, et cetera, is going to be very, very important to help catalyze the sort of the development of domestically produced CAR T cell therapies. So this is a SWOT analysis of the sort of the Chinese, in this case, CAR T cell therapy market, which was conducted by my colleagues. So the strengths, clearly, China has an expanding aging population. There is definitely going to be a growing target market for CAR T cell therapies. We anticipate that there are going to be label expansions, adding to the sort of the hematological malignancies that are so far treated, to look at other sort of indications as well. And what we're also sort of seeing is the sort of the growth of very, very sort of specific CDMOs who are able to actually manufacture these CAR T cells. We're seeing that a lot in China. The weaknesses, of course, is that it's still a sort of a new or fairly new sort of treatment modality. So therefore, there's still some sort of caution around sort of like side effects, toxicities, etc. And also, as I mentioned, the cost of treatment. This is also going to be potentially a barrier to the uptake of CAR T cell therapies. However, there are opportunities. As I mentioned, the sort of the current availability of treatments they're not optimal, and therefore there is a great unmet medical need for much more sort of like targeted therapeutics, and therefore that's a great commercial opportunity for CAR T cell therapy manufacturers. And sort of particularly where, for example, patients' overall survival can be significantly improved. The threats, well, one of the sort of the big issues is, in fact, there are lots of companies now piling into this sort of into these cell therapy and also gene therapy areas. So we're seeing it it's a very, very crowded space. So therefore, again, it's going to be very, very important for companies to be able to differentiate themselves and actually sort of making sure that they're sort of properly targeting themselves. So overall, although China was a bit slow to the market, the advances that we've seen in the past 5 years are clearly going to sort of demonstrate a strong foundation, a strong springboard for sort of the Chinese cell and gene therapy companies. And through the deals that we've seen them doing, they're not just going to be big players in the Chinese market. We actually anticipate that they're going to be major players in the global market. I thank you for your attention.